Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to Living on the Edge. On our program this week, we see why the hosiery boom in Tiruppur cannot be sustained, how ancient monuments are gradually being destroyed and what we can do to reverse the process, and an investigation into illegal mining activity in Himachal. Shashi Gulati, an intact member from Coimbatore, wants us to do a story on the polluted rivers in Tamil Nadu. Your programs give us hope. Has there been any positive response from those in power? We pray there will be. With other friends of the environment, we have been agitating since 1988 for saving the Bhavani River from pollutants of dyeing and bleaching units and tanneries. The Bhavani River that Shashi Gulati talks about is the source of water for the people of Tiruppur, India's hosiery capital. Pollution from the tanneries has contaminated the river that passes through the town. Priya Somaya visited Tiruppur to see the extent of damage caused and see what can be done to remedy the situation.
As a child, Kupuswamy was fascinated by the clear-flowing water of the Noyal River. He often played on its banks and even learned to swim here. But that was a long time ago. A few years ago, the textile boom hit Tiruppur. Almost overnight, this little-known town became India's hosiery and knitwear capital. New units mushroomed to meet huge export orders, and today there are over 700 such concerns. On the face of it, this was good for the town. Employment opportunities grew and income skyrocketed. But in the rush to capitalize on Tiruppur's potential, the threat of pollution was ignored altogether. The bleaching and dyeing of thousands of meters of cloth results in the generation of about 500 lakh litres of effluent every day. Tiruppur was just not ready to handle discharge of this magnitude.
The water comes from the dyeing units. Drains are full of colored water.
What problems do you face?
It's flooded. There's a lot of problem.
The sudden spurt also would not have been visualized because it's 3-4 times in just 2-3 years. For any township, for any civil administration, to handle such a high spurt in activities is unimaginable. They have posed a serious problem in 2-3 years, particularly on environmental control issues.
Because processing involves huge quantities of water with the addition of chemicals at every stage, it's obvious that effluents will contain a host of toxic substances. In fact, earlier several chemicals that were highly toxic were being used. They were so strong that they were found to cause skin ailments to people wearing these fabrics. This resulted in many Western importers imposing a ban on fabrics processed with these chemicals.
They don't want to import garments from us, such garments as are colored with benzidine-based dyes. Such dyes, we are told, are health hazardous. So commercially we are pressurized or rather compelled to drop those dyes. We have already done it. Now we don't dye our hosiery cloth with such banned dyes.
Despite this assertion, it's difficult to believe that chemicals still being used are harmless. That the unit owners couldn't care less was apparent. Even as we filmed, contaminated water flowed out of tanks and found its way to, you guessed right, the Noyal River. It's clear that the Noyal can't meet Tiruppur's water requirement anymore. But wouldn't it surprise you to know that groundwater sources too have been polluted? Wells in this village on the outskirts of Tiruppur, which were once used for drinking and irrigation, have been abandoned, though villagers, sometimes in desperation, use the water for washing.
Why don't you drink this water?
It's polluted. We can't drink this water. It's very salty.
This water is not good. We can't use it. The water is polluted due to dyeing units.
They have affected all the wells in that region, so that even water which is just a few meters down is not potable. Nobody can drink it, not even for the cattle like to drink that water. It's discolored and it's got highly toxic. Excess of chemicals, and whether it's from pesticides or whether it's from these dyeing units effluents, excessive toxins affect the human body. The poor people have no choice. If you've been to Tiruppur, you'll see the lines, the queues of pots and pans that are there for the tankers to come and give them water.
Some dyeing unit owners are candid enough to admit that they are polluting the area. They claim, however, that treatment plants are in the offing.
We all really feel that that pollution is the biggest problem for coming years. That's the reason we are realized and we formed the company, and within a year or two definitely we have confidence that this pollution problem will not be there in Tiruppur.
We've been hearing this from 1988 onward. They've set up a Tiruppur Dyers Association, you know, with the idea of a common effluent treatment plant, as whatever they call it, and nothing has so far materialized.
The future, it would seem, holds the key to everything. Just how the industries got clearance to set up operations without treatment plants is of course another matter. The fact is they've got the environmental clearance or pollution clearance. So how has that happened when they're actually not treating the effluent?
The industries, whether new or old, they have to get the clearance or consent, it's called consent from the board under the water pollution control law.
But say in the last 2 years or last year, there must have been proposals to set up new plants. Those must have been sanctioned? Or in the past 2 or 3 years?
Suppose during the past 2-3 years, and during the formation of the proposals for common effluent treatment plant, if these units have been taken into account, then the consent would have been granted. Otherwise, we don't grant any consent to new industries unless they have got a specific proposal to treat the effluent.
Allocation for treatment plants is just on paper.
Now, here comes our monitoring efficacy, because we have got a field system, very good field system.
The Pollution Control Board, you know, the agents who are working at the ground level, the inspectors, they are easily bought off. I mean, in the sense they can be paid and the license is given or no action is taken against the polluting industry. Do you feel this is true?
No, I won't say it is. But it's a
Is the Pollution Control Board, do you feel it's really effective in controlling pollution?
That's what I feel. We have been controlling pollution.
Answers such as these raise questions about the effectiveness of the Pollution Control Board. However, pressure from environmental groups has forced the board to plan the construction of 11 common treatment plants. But finance is likely to be a problem, as an earlier government subsidy for treatment units has been withdrawn.
Government of India and as well as Government of Tamil Nadu agreed to provide 25% of the project cost as a subsidy. Now, because of the change in some industrial policy in Government of India, they curtailed their subsidy to the maximum of 50 lakhs or 25%, whichever is less, which created concern to these dyers. They are fear that they may have to again invest few more crores.
Unless effluent treatment becomes a reality, pollution control will remain an impossible dream. It's only when the river Noyal begins flowing again, the way it did when Kuppuswamy was a child, that pollution will begin to be reined in. Everyone knows what needs to be done to achieve this, but are they willing?
Fida Muhammad Bakshi of Bijaypur, Karnataka says she likes our program but would like to see stories done on our historical sites. Dhananjay Dwale of Nagpur says, I see your program regularly. I am a student in the 10th standard. In my city, I have seen that for constructing new buildings, many old monuments are broken. By these activities, monuments are destroyed. So there is a grave danger to old monuments of our country. Do we have any laws to save our heritage? Well, Dhananjay, to answer that question, Nandini Rajbare takes you to Rajasthan, where hundreds of forts and palaces are crumbling. But there's a silver lining to this monumental abuse, as her story shows.
Maharajas don't exist anymore. At best, not officially. Their titles were abolished in 1971 along with their privileges. But the passage of time hasn't yet effaced the grandeur of the palaces, forts and havelis where the kings and nawabs of old lived in opulent splendor. In fact, India's monumental heritage remains unwalled in its diversity and scale. Perhaps that's why we take our monuments for granted.
It's a non-event because it's there. In Europe, building of architecture or monumental importance is something you go to look at because your life is divorced from it. Maybe what happens in India is we take it for granted.
Not only do old buildings provide us with indelible links to our past, but they are also the heritage of future generations. If we are unable to preserve them, they may disappear altogether. It is true that it is impossible to completely halt the ravages of time. What can be attempted is a slowing of that process, something the Archaeological Survey of India understands very well. Set up in 1961, it is responsible for monuments of national importance that are over 100 years old. The ASI protects about 5,000 such buildings, of which 1,500 are looked after by state governments. 5,000 monuments for a country with India's history and culture doesn't sound like too much. Thousands of other buildings need protection too. The question is, how are they to be identified and who is going to pay to preserve them?
It's very easy to down the government on these kind of issues. It's very easy to finger point and say, what are you doing about it? I think you have to bear in mind that, with the limited amount of resources, what do you address first? I mean, do I go for education, do I go for medical thing, or do I preserve my monuments? And I think where it turns around, where the monuments themselves are attracting people to come in and therefore revenue, it makes sense.
This is just what scores of forts and palaces in Rajasthan are attempting to do. Realizing that preservation is expensive and government funds limited, many old buildings have been converted into hotels.
When we bought this property was in ruins, including this pond which you see, it was completely filled with sand. We had to dig this pond out. And inside the rooms, there was a pigeon dropping up to this height. And rooms were in a very bad shape. All the roofs were leaking, and we restored it.
But not all owners are able to raise the funds for restoration. For some, selling out to big commercial interests is the only option. Vijay Mandir Palace here in Alwar has been sealed for years, a mute testimony to the extent of the neglect of our cultural heritage. The Alwar family claims it could take an unaffordable 40 crore rupees to restore and preserve this once beautiful palace. The other option is to sell it to groups of hotels offering to buy it. Selling out may make commercial sense, but it is not always good for conservation. Interiors have to be altered to meet the demands of tourists, and this may irreparably damage the original construction. Besides, once they are sold, these monuments become inaccessible to ordinary visitors. That's why museums on the premises are seen as a happy compromise. Jodhpur's Umaid Bhavan is a museum and a hotel and doing very well. But the Mehrangarh Fort Museum in the same city cannot recover even its maintenance costs, despite being an architectural wonder. Forts are perhaps the most difficult to maintain because they cannot generate their own funds. Jaigarh Fort in Rajasthan is in a state of neglect despite having the biggest cannon on wheels in the world.
Commercialization and development need not necessarily be a dirty word when you're talking of conservation and restoration of a building. I think you have to look at it positively, because if you cannot develop a building, you can't make it financially viable, it's not possible to restore all these buildings. Conservation has to be financially viable.
And that may not be too difficult given the tourist potential of many states in India. The question is, will increasing commercialization destroy the very essence of the monuments? And what of the thousands of dilapidated structures all over the country that hold no interest for marketers but have incredible historical value? Will they just waste away because we cannot find enough money to protect them, or because their owners couldn't care less? These craftsmen, hard at work restoring a monument, can do only so much with their traditional skills handed down over generations. What they need is our support, because there are only a few of them left. Shah Jahan cut off the hands of the craftsmen who built the Taj, so its beauty couldn't be duplicated. But surely even he would have relented if he knew their skills handed down over time would one day help preserve the Taj and thousands of other precious monuments.
Solan's Saproon Valley supplies a large part of Delhi and Punjab's vegetable needs, as it's been doing for decades. But now, illegal mining threatens to destroy all that. Harmeet Singh, a resident of Dharamshala, Himachal, wanted us to cover illegal mining in his area. Illegal mining in Dharamshala has resulted in hollowed mountains and is posing a serious threat to the environment. I hope you'll be happy with the Solan case study done by Tisha Srivastav.
The Saproon Valley in Solan was once called the Happy Valley. 10 kilometers long, it's an agricultural zone, or at least it was. We stumbled on the valley by accident. Our team was passing by when we noticed mining activity suddenly coming to a standstill. Further inquiries revealed that mining in this area had come under severe criticism, and that the appearance of our crew had pushed miners onto the defensive. Here's the story. Solan forms a sort of junction between Punjab, Haryana and Himachal. It's a growing township and famous for its plums, peaches, apricots and cauliflower seeds which grow in the Saproon Valley. Floriculture is also practiced here. But now, mining threatens to destroy all this. This limestone belt has been an aquifer for centuries, holding and releasing water perennially, and is the only natural source of irrigation available. This source of water has now gone down by 2/3. The reason? Blasting operations for mining are pushing water deeper into the rock crevices. As per the mining laws, restraining walls are to be built to check the falling debris. This debris is really loose soil and pebbles that choke waterways and nalas. But no mortar or cement is used, only stacked up stones instead. Even the DM of Solan district observed this irregularity in his report to the High Court.
The land below the quarry gets really bad in the rains. The mud and the stones block the roads and fall over the land.
Laws prohibit mining within 50 to 100 meters of a national or state highway. And yet here's what we saw. Despite endless claims by miners that afforestation is taking place, the bald, scarred faces of the mountains tell a different story. The lack of greening and soil conservation measures are responsible for slush flowing down the hillside. During the rains, villagers find that their land, livestock and livelihood are endangered. It's true that mining can't be wished away, but then must it be carried out at the expense of agriculture? As a farmer puts it,
you have a population of about 10,000 in this valley that is totally dependent on agriculture. You have a turnover of between 8 to 10 crores as far as tomatoes are concerned. You have a turnover of about 2 crores as far as cauliflower seed is concerned. Floriculture activity is coming up. Then you have migrant labor which comes in for employment, which is employed on agricultural farms. You have orchards over here. I think in general terms, the amount of man days that are generated as far as by the agriculture activity is concerned is far more than what mining can provide or is providing.
An independent investigation by the High Court revealed that limestone mined here is of average quality. The mining is open cast and manual, and the area can do without it. On the other hand, agricultural activities in the southwestern part of Himachal are of critical importance to the population. We never got a chance to put this to the miners as they evaded us. And the government reports make many conflicting observations, but they all acknowledge the environmental degradation. As things stand today, the agriculturalists are on the verge of moving the Supreme Court to draw attention to their plight. They've been pushed to the wall by the inability of the district administration to hold the quarry owners accountable. Many agriculturalists believe quarry owners enjoy political support, and that this explains the reason for official apathy. Whichever way you look at it, the fate of the Saproon Valley seems far from happy.
According to an estimate, each year 3 lakh tons of dry wood worth Rs 500 crores is consigned to flames with the dead.